If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. Thank you.
It's your time for Chai with Nanice. Get ready for substance, clarity, change, and especially empowerment. Get ready to turn over stones, uncover stories, and get to the heart of the matter in every area of your life. Any mood runs, any emotion flies, and your dreams are within your grasp. There are no limits or boundaries, and your comfort zone is out of reach, yet it's the safest place you will ever be. Come in, sit down, and have some chai with Nanice.
Welcome to Chai with Nanice. I'm Nanice. Today's show is about our educational system, and we're going to take a different look at it than we've ever have in the past. What I really would like to talk about with our guest today is how our educational system has affected us individually and collectively as a global consciousness. Many of you have heard me talk about the paradigms that the education system and other systems like the religious system and the economic system and therefore have created. But today we're just going to focus on the educational aspects. So very often what we see is we see children up to the age of 5 and they're free and lighthearted and just feeling good about themselves. They don't have issues of worthiness. Of course, they've been abused or something traumatic has happened to them. But otherwise, up until the age of 5 and they go to school, they are fairly feeling pretty good about themselves. But something happens as soon as they enter school. And it's this. From the day they enter school, they're taught programs of right and wrong, good and bad, deserving, not deserving, failure, success. And this is all under the umbrella of worthiness or not worthiness. And so when we go to school for years and years and years, 12 years or more, by the time we graduate, what we really graduate with is this paradigm that in longer to survive in this world, we have to be worthy. And in order to be worthy, we have to meet certain rules, guides, restrictions. Otherwise, we fail, and then we're not worthy, and then we can't survive in the world. So when we look around us right now, when we look around at people in the world and our family and even ourselves, many of us have worthiness issues where we don't feel worthy. And I actually have a direct experience with this from working with people all over the world for a very, very long time now. Whatever somebody comes with me to as presenting problem, if I dig deep enough, and I always do, what I discover is a worthiness program going on, a sense of I'm not worthy enough, I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough, and that blocks so much good from coming. We're changing, we're shifting, a new world is beginning now. And what I mean by that is the way that we relate to ourselves and relate to each other and relate to the global community around us, which is us. And in this shifting, this idea of worthiness needs to disappear. And when I mean disappear, I totally mean disappear because before we're 5 years old, we don't think, are we worthy or we're not worthy? It's made up. And the truth is, you and me and everyone else cannot help but be worthy. We're unconditionally worthy. And we need to return to that knowing. And as soon as you return to the knowing that you, in fact, are unconditionally worthy, this concept of worthiness disappears. It no longer exists. And so today we're going to unravel one of the systems that has actually created this program of worthiness for us. And my guest today is the amazing Jen Schwartz. She has a master's in education. She has a PhD. She's a PhD student, is the mother of 4 boys, ages 3, 8, and 10. She and her husband live in Salt Lake City, Utah, where they founded the Sago Lily School, a Sudbury model school that emphasizes self-directed learning and a democratic community. For over 13 years, Jen has participated in, taught, and created personal development and parenting programs and supporting others through journeys of life in one of her greatest pleasures. While her current doctoral studies keep her busy, she can usually be found surrounded by children, her own as well as those in school. Jen's hobbies include scrapbooking, doll making, puzzles of all kinds, healthy living, music, educational discourse, being outdoors, and Taekwondo. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I've been very excited to have you. Very excited.
Yes, I'm very excited to be here, too.
Awesome. Because I know you personally. So this was it's a very, very personal invitation. And I should mention to our listeners before we begin, the way that I know you, Jen, is through my son Clay. And Clay is 12 years old now. He's almost 13. And he went to traditional public school, as you know, Jen, up until this time last year. So he was in sixth grade. And at that time, the school was saying that there's a problem, and his dad was saying there's a problem, and, everybody's going, there's a problem, and Clay was really suffering from low self-esteem. And it just didn't happen last year. It was going on since kindergarten, and he was in special classes, but they weren't really helping. And every year after year after year, he was feeling worse and worse about himself, and really, honestly, couldn't even read at this time last year. And my intuition was telling me, to check out Sego Lily. And a friend of mine happened to work there, a coincidence that we met, in fact. And I decided to put Clay into your school, as you know. And I was hesitant. Because it's a very untraditional school, and I'll have you explain all that. But I have to say, this is this is a year later, and my child Clay, he has developed amazing self-confidence and self-esteem and social skills that he did not have before. He was very challenged in all those skills, and the social skills and reading and writing and everything. And after a year being in your school, he's an extremely confident child. He can make decisions. He has great communication skills. He has great social skills. And in fact, he made the decision that he wanted to go back to regular school, which wasn't, that wasn't my plan. That wasn't the plan at all. My plan was just to create an environment for him where he felt good about himself and he could learn, because he couldn't under the regiment of traditional school. And he decided to go back to regular school for social aspects, to meet more kids, to have a bigger group of peers, because your it's a smaller school, and also because he felt that he was ready to do that and wanted that experience. And he did it on his own, which to me is the biggest success, for a child to make that kind of decision on their own. So thank you for everything that you have done for him. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, thank you for the gift of having him be in our community. He really is, or has been, an amazing contribution. And it's always so amazing when a child comes in. And, we're not a school that's designed for children who have learning disabilities or social issues or, necessarily anything. But we're such a great, loving community that anyone can fit in, regardless of who they are and what kind of challenges they're facing. And when Clay first showed up, getting him to even say hello was a challenge.
Yes.
And he's just not that same person anymore. And
No.
it was just an honor to get to be a part of that transformation in his life.
Yeah. I am ever so grateful. I'm so grateful. Jen, could you tell our listeners a little bit about the school?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Sego Lily School is currently in our 6th year. We are in Salt Lake City, Utah, but we are a Sudbury model school, and there are schools like ours all around the world. In fact, the Sudbury Valley School, who's we're modeled after, is a little more than 40 years old. So this isn't a brand new model. It wasn't an educational experiment. It's something that's been tried and true. And there's really a couple of essential pieces to a Sudbury model school. The first of which is that it is a school for self-directed learning. And what that means is that our students, who in our case range from as young as 4 all the way through the end of high school age, so 18 or 19, when they come to us, we do not tell them what they should be learning. We instead give them the freedom to pursue their own interests and passions. Now, obviously, with such a wide range of ages, we see a lot of different things. For a 4-year-old, their passions and interests are blocks and playing house and playing tag. All of those things a 4-year-old should be doing. And as children get older, obviously they begin to develop more specific interests. So it might be around computers, or it might be around science, it might be cooking. But whatever that is, we believe that every interest a child has is valid, and we do what we can to nurture those interests. And it's the role of the staff, the adults in the community, to really support the children. So if what they need us to do is teach them a specific class, we do that. If they need information, we help them find it. If they need us to stay out of their way so that they can be on their own journey, we do that too. So that self-directed learning piece is really a primary aspect of what we do. And then the other piece is the way we run the community. I often will have people tell me, oh, you give kids freedom like that, it's just going to be Lord of the Flies. It's going to be chaos. So we have a lot of structure to how our community is run.
Yes.
We run our school as a democratic community, so we have a weekly meeting where we discuss everything from, what's the new rule that we need to how are we spending on our budget? Do we need new paint for the art room? Do we need, a new computer program to teach whatever? And we talk about all of those things in an open weekly meeting. Everyone has a vote, and that doesn't matter if you're 4 or 44, you get a vote in the decisions that are made. And that democratic aspect is really what has our school run. I mean, without it, it really would be a chaotic thing where kids were just running around doing what they wanted. And we also have a judicial system, which is how we handle infractions of rules. And it's designed to be a system its primary job is to get to the bottom of what's actually happening. So if someone's leaving messes or maybe someone's bullying someone else, we really look at, what is actually happening and why. We want to know why. I mean, if it's, if you're leaving messes because you're forgetting, then what can we put in place so that you can remember? And if you're bullying someone, then we really want to get to the bottom of why. What is it that's causing you to act that way towards another human being, and what can we do to help you so that we have a loving and supportive community where everyone feels safe and honored? So that's really the main thing. There's the self-directed element, there's the democratic element, there's our judicial committee element, and that's pretty much how the schools work.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing, especially to actually experience it in action.
It is amazing. And, as you said, you were hesitant when you came and found the school, even though that's where your heart was leading you.
Yes.
And I see that with parents all of the time because it's not what most of us experienced growing up.
Right. It's not.
We're used to the model that you were talking about,
Yes.
which is, you go to kindergarten and the teacher tells you what to do, and you either do it and get approval or you don't do it and you don't get approval. And then that continues for 12 years until you graduate and then probably put yourself in college and do more of the same.
And spend your whole life doing that. It just changes the way that it looks. You end up doing that in a job, and you end up doing that in the community, and you end up doing that in your city, and you're not even aware that's what you're doing because you've been brainwashed. You've been programmed into doing that. Yesterday, or the day before, I was sitting down with a little girl, and she was in 6th grade, and literally stressed out like I have never seen anybody stressed out because she wasn't doing well in math. And, we sat down for a couple hours, and it's what you see. I mean, she wasn't really an exception. You see that. I think I read somewhere recently, you probably know this more than I do, that there's like 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds that are now take Prozac or something like that for all the stress.
Oh,
and
sure.
It's a large number. And why does that happen? Why does that happen? And I think it has to do with the paradigm that I was originally talking about. And I'd love to hear your views about all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very valid. And, one of the things that's really great about this conversation is I think there's a lot of agreement in our country and in other countries with similar educational systems that the system we have isn't working.
Right.
And it's rare that you actually get to have a conversation about the underlying reasons why it's not working. A lot of times it's, we don't have enough funding, or, these teachers aren't trained well enough. There's a lot of superficial things that people look at, but this is such a core paradigm.
Yes.
And, as you were speaking about it, I can picture things. We have students at our school who, like Clay's a great example, come in when they're, 11, 12 years old. And sometimes even older. And we have students who come in when they're 4 and 5. And there's a big difference with those groups of students. The 4 and 5-year-olds come in and they just continue their happy, satisfied, passionate, little curious lives. And it takes some time for them to learn, the rules of the community and why we don't hit someone else over the head with a block, or, whatever those social skills are that they need to learn.
Yes.
But there's never any moment of them having to relearn how to be happy. And as we see the older students come in, we've seen it over and over again. They don't come in because all of a sudden they thought, wow, this would be cool, I'll go to school over here. The older students come to us because there's something's happened. It might be that they're failing in a subject. It might be that socially they're not fitting in, whatever it is, but there's something there. And they then have to take time in our community to heal.
Yeah.
Which, we're more than happy to be the support for, but it's also heartbreaking to see child after child coming through with those those wounds, those traumas that have to be
Yes.
overcome.
From school, from their several years at school, that the
Yes.
school and the way the school has treated them has created trauma enough so that they need to heal from it. There's
Yes.
something wrong there.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting. You can look at it from a lot of different ways, but the paradigm of education we have is really, it really started with the Industrial Revolution, when we were in a time in history where productivity and progress were just what was going on in our country. And we had to look at, well, okay, if we're going to take these women out of their homes and put them to work too, for example, what are we going to do with all these children? We have to do something. So, compulsory education went from being a few years to, 12 years, 13 years of school.
I didn't know that.
And then inside that, it was, we have to come up with more things that are important to teach them, et cetera, et cetera. But the whole paradigm really revolves around the idea that there's a certain set of information, and everyone needs to know it. And because you're a certain age, you should be learning a particular thing at a particular time. And so really, if you're 6 years old and you're in first grade, you should be learning how to read, which does not take into account the fact that not all 6-year-olds yet have the brain development to learn how to read.
Yeah.
But because we have this sort of assembly line model of education, we can't say, and you can't say inside that system, well, it's okay, when you get ready, then we'll help you, because a teacher has, between 20 and, depending on, in high school, 40 or 50 children in front of them at once. And the only thing they can do is deliver one thing in one way at a time and hope it sticks. And, the reality is human beings aren't all the same. We're just not. We don't all develop the same way. We don't all like the same things. We don't all have the same strengths and weaknesses. And yet we have this whole system that constantly expects that from children.
Yes.
You just right there, you have a model where people are going to fail.
Yes.
If you happen to have the right set of strengths at the right moment, good for you. You're going to get an A. But, of course, then that sets up the whole other side of the worthiness paradigm that you're talking about. All of a sudden, someone's saying, well, I'm smart, or, I've got the teacher's approval, so I'm a good person. However that starts to show up for them, they begin to relate to themselves like they are worthy.
Yes, exactly.
And you have a whole other side of trauma that goes on when, later they fail and don't understand why.
Right. And also creates this paradigm where they don't know how to relate to other people who don't do as good as they do, and a sense of judgment starts. Oh, I'm an A student, and I've got all A's, and they look at somebody who's not doing as well as less than, and that's an energy of separation, and that's what we have in the world today. That's what's responsible for all our problems.
Oh, absolutely. If you walk into a typical middle school, you can, immediately see the issues of the world reflected in that microcosm.
Yeah.
You have your cliques, you have, your smart kids, and it really is, these children start to just categorize themselves by whatever their thing is. So if they're the smart kids, they're all together. If they're the athletes, they're all together. If they're the, the musicians, the band geeks, they're all together. And there's very little crossover that even happens in those social groups.
Right.
Even in a classroom, you could walk in and you'll see those social groups sitting together and rarely interacting with one another. And so there's no learning of, understanding and appreciating the differences between people in a paradigm like that.
Yeah. When I talk about purpose, because a lot of people come to me, like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Because everybody believes they have a purpose, but most people have no idea what that is. And so I reduce it down, and what it looks like is this, that whatever purpose we might have, and we all do have a purpose, when you reduce it down to the base core of what it is, it's our unique way of expressing love. So therefore, your purpose in life is simply to express love. And if we just look at the education system paradigm, what it does is the opposite of that. So it keeps people from their purpose because it separates them. It makes them feel worthy, not worthy. It makes them feel like they're this part of the group. They can't relate to that part of the group. And so that's not love. That's the opposite of love. And so it's really setting people up not to live their purpose. And I think that's one of the reasons why, when people get to be adults and, all the way through their lives, they still have no idea what their purpose is because they've been taught to disconnect.
Well, and I think, too, it gives them a false sense of what, they think their purpose is, which is to perform something.
Right.
If you're a
Yes.
football player, that's your purpose, is to play football and perform that and,
Right.
and win that way. And if you're a smart kid, then your purpose is to go to Harvard.
Mhm.
Whatever that is.
Right.
It sounds like it replaces that true purpose with
Yeah.
something false. And it's like the false god that then gets followed throughout
Yes.
that person's life.
I love that, the
You know,
false god. Yes. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Until they come across someone like you, and all of a sudden the false god is, crumbles, and you can begin to look at what's real underneath that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about letting go of that identity, that false identity too. And if you look at it, false identity never makes anyone happy. It might give the illusion of it for a brief period of time, but it's not everlasting.
No, no, and I think it's part of what leads to that constant striving for more and better. And
Yeah.
if you are that football player, and guess what? Now you're out of college and you didn't get a pro contract. What are you going to do now?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of done at the age of 22 at that
Yeah.
point. So what would
Yeah.
be the point?
Yeah.
Unless you can
Yeah.
find another another, whatever your next false promise would be, and then you can follow
Mhm.
that. But it's still not satisfying, regardless of how successful you get with
Absolutely.
it.
And it leads to depression. When
Right.
we see that not just in schools, but we see that out, in adult society, so to speak. It's all around.
Yeah.
So if I was a suicide outreach counselor for many years and dealt with many very depressed people and people who were actively committing suicide, and that was many years ago. So I didn't understand as much as I do now. But if I go back hindsight, what I really see is that these same people who were depressed and even suicidal that whole experience came from what we're talking about now, this sense of unworthiness, not being good enough, not living their purpose, having to be I'm sorry, I can't talk. Being it won't come out. Suppressing or regressing themselves
Right.
because
Right.
of outside expectation and even what they've taken on to do that to themselves. So it's like wherever we look, what we're doing is we're seeing negative symptoms from the way that we bring up our children, the way that our education system brings up our children. And it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I mean, when you start to think about it, you think about these adults who are suicidal and depressed at 40. Well, that probably started when they were 5.
Right.
Right. If we make the assumption that particular adult had perfect parents,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yes.
it's a hard assumption to make, but we'll pretend for a minute. Let's pretend they had the perfect parents who did everything right.
Yes.
But we have this legal system that says legally your child has to be in school X number of days per year, X number, and if you don't, I mean, you have police and juvenile enforcement showing up at your door.
Mm-hmm.
So and we're saying you have to be in this system. You have to go to school. And for most children, what does that mean? That means the traditional model. It means the whole system that we're talking about, where from that very early age, you either got the gold star or you didn't.
Right.
And it begins to define you at 5. And, some kids manage to hold on to their identity a little bit longer than others.
Yeah.
When I taught public school back in the mid-'90s, I was teaching second grade. And I could see it there, and it's a big part of what had me leave. I could see some of those children still had that. They still had that spark and that passion and that curiosity, and they really didn't care what the system was. They were just going to be happy.
Right.
And there were others whose spirits had already been broken.
Right.
And, and in second grade is sort of this crossover year, and we were actually told at one point, I remember having a conversation with a woman at the district office, and it was a meeting of the whole district of second grade teachers. I don't even remember how we had it, but we were talking about it being the year where, this is it's fine for them to have a little bit more fun this year, but really this is it. This is after this, they really need to grow up. And
wow,
it was like she may as well have been telling us, you got to break them this year, because those few that haven't been broken yet, this is the time to do it. And that's not something I was going to participate in.
No, wow, that's pretty extreme, but it happens all the
It
time.
is.
Yeah.
It is, and it does happen all the time, and it's so heartbreaking to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing a little research recently just on laws and stuff like that, and what I discovered was that we sign our children over to the government, that our children become a part of the government. And the way you know this, right? So this is
Oh,
accurate.
yeah.
It's through, as soon as we get a birth certificate for our child, basically we're signing ownership over to the government. And then the Social Security number, we're signing ownership over to the government. And that's why they can come into our homes and force us to send our children to school, or, force them to get vaccines and all the other stuff that has gone on and may go on.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So I have a blended family. I have a son, my husband has a son, and then we have two young sons together. And when my stepson, my husband's boy, started school, he was in public school in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned to my husband a few weeks into it, and I said, my gosh, I feel like the school district has joint custody of our child.
Yes.
And we already had joint custody. We already had only half, we were already sharing custody with his mother, and all of a sudden it felt like the Salt Lake School District owned him. Mm. We got a letter back the very first, and kindergarten isn't even compulsory in Utah.
Right.
But we still got the letter back, and then the one in first grade was even more forceful. But we get the letter from the district that says your child needs to be in school. This is the time they need to be here. This is I don't remember the exact details, but it was basically setting up, if your child's not here, they will be behind for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
And he's this 5-year-old kindergarten, and they say things like, if you're taking vacations, please plan them around school vacations, et cetera, et cetera. And gosh, it was a crazy, crazy thing to experience that from the side of a parent. My older son, well, actually, both of my boys, my biological boys who are old enough, the 3-year-old hasn't started school yet, but the 10-year-old and the 8-year-old have never done anything but gone to Sago Lily, where we encourage parents to go on vacation and to have a great time, because we don't think that education's limited to the walls of our school by any means. And it was just so strange to suddenly have the school district telling me what I could and couldn't do, when I could and couldn't travel, what time we had to get up in the morning, all of that.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
That's really all I could say about it at the time, too, was wow.
Yeah. 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 So what do you see the future? How do you see the future?
Well, there's a couple trends right now that actually in some ways are a little even more disturbing than what's gone on. There's a big trend. I always call it the pink frosting on the poo cake trend. And it exists in a lot of things other than just education. But, we have the system, and as I said, most people would agree that our educational system doesn't work. So what do you do when you've got a poo cake in front of you? Well, if you put pink frosting on it, it'll look prettier, and, people won't notice for a while.
Until you bite into it.
Until you bite it, right?
But,
since we're not quite at the point where I don't think there's a critical mass of people ready to bite in and go, whoa, most people are willing to let the pink frosting pass. And what I mean by that in education is, you have these initiatives where schools stop giving grades. And the whole thought behind that is, well, it's not good for their self-esteem if they're failing, so we just won't give grades anymore.
Okay, that sounds good.
In one sense, it does sound really great, right? Except the reality is that the child is still doing the same work. They're still doing, say, the same math worksheet, right?
Yes.
And they're still looking at some point in time to see, okay, there were 10 problems. How many of them did you answer correctly, and how many of them did you not answer correctly? And the child is still faced with the reality of, oh, wow, I only got one of those right. I must be really stupid. So whether or not you put the F on the paper, they know. They know they're failing. So it's not it's no worse for their self-esteem than just going ahead and sticking the F on it. And that's what I mean by the pink frosting. And we see this a lot. I was actually in another local private school this past summer, and they were explaining to me how they deal with community. See, they have a very big, I'm going to get really sarcastic here, but they have a huge commitment to community. Okay, that's what the director of the school is explaining to me, and she's then telling me how, if we're looking at this school for my stepson, actually. His mother, actually, I'll rephrase that. His mother was looking at this school for my stepson. He actually goes to Sago Lily School. He's in his second year there now. He's completely happy, and his father and I had no interest in moving him. But his mother was looking at another school. So we obliged and went to look. And the director of the school is explaining this commitment to community and how, they take the third graders, which he would have been had he gone to school there, and every Friday they have these groups that they call families. And they take one child from each grade level, 1st through 8th, and they put them all together, and they're a family. And they get to be a family for the whole year. And every Friday they eat lunch together. And once a month, they do a project together for an hour. that's the pink frosting. That's the look. We're creating age mixing, which is big in education these days. We're creating community, which is huge in education. Well, the child has no choice about, say, the sixth grader that they like or don't like. The child has no choice about whether they actually feel like eating with anybody that Friday. Maybe they're in a bad mood and really just don't want to communicate with anyone that day. It's not up to them.
Yes.
The family was created by the authoritarian system of the adults who said, oh, you know what would be good for children? And then they go forth and do it.
Yeah.
So there's some trends like that I find them disturbing because it keeps us from actually getting to the heart, really getting to the heart of what's not working. When you get enough of those pretty things going, people start to go, oh, but our school's so great. We have community and we have this. And it doesn't really address the core issues. But, that's distinct from the question you asked me is where do I see the future going? And I tend to be pretty optimistic. So while I think things are headed in that direction at the moment, I think in general, human beings in our culture are getting less and less willing to swallow the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And we're getting more and more interested in really looking at the heart of things. And whether that's, education for our children or, you were talking about, what is my purpose in life? Why am I on the planet? Whatever that is. And I think as the more we look, the more we're going to see that the way we treat children in our society is, frankly, it's abusive. We treat children as though they're less than. We treat children as though they can't think for themselves.
Yeah.
We invalidate their emotions, etc. And I really hope that the more people begin to see that, the more they will embrace things like Sago Lily School. I don't think it's necessarily the right choice for every child. There's a lot of different people with a lot of different needs out there. But I think generally schools that are truly communities, where children are free to interact with one another, and where they are free to really have what's important to them be acknowledged and honored. And that might look a lot of different ways, but I'd be totally happy to close down the school system tomorrow and rebuild it in a better way.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing that I'm seeing and I hear you speaking about is that schools, teachers, and the people that run the schools don't listen to the children. They just want them to do what they want them to do. And I had an experience last year. It was with my son Travis, and he was 13 at the time, and having some challenges in school, and had me come in, and I come in, and we were in front of this big boardroom, and all his teachers are sitting around the table. So they're all there, and it's him and me. So first of all, it seemed like kind of like a firing squad. That was the first thing. And then they started, speaking about all the things that Travis needs to do different, that he's not really trying enough, and he's not he's not doing this, and then one teacher says, and he's not getting to his first, he had a gym or something as first class, and he's not getting to his first class, and blah, 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 and Travis, why are you not getting to your first class? And I said, well, obviously he's not interested enough. Well, they didn't like that answer.
Right.
They didn't like it all. And they're going on. They go, one vice principal, she says to Travis, what's going to happen next year if you have a really important class and you don't want to get up in time for the class? What's going to happen then? And his answer, he looked us straight in the eye. He was very calm, no energy. And he said, I don't know. How am I supposed to predict the future?
Oh, how great.
Yes. And they went, all of them, every single, the principal, all the teachers, everyone there, just like, all in a huff and a puff. And they start trying to make him say what they want him to say. And he says, I can say what you want me to say, but that won't make it true. And this went on for a little while, and they didn't know what to do with it. They obviously never had a child sit there and say the truth. And by the time we left, we were fine. We were just like, that went good. And they didn't know what to do with him. They didn't know what to do because their paradigm of you must do what I tell you to do, otherwise you're wrong and I'm going to punish you and you're going to fail in your life. It can't ring true. So,
and for most people, those kind of threats work.
Yes.
We have this illusion in our culture that the way to have a good life is you do really well in school, and then you go to college, and you do really well in college, and then you get your degree, and that means that you then get a good job, and then you have that good job, and then, but then maybe you get married and maybe you have some kids, or maybe you don't do those things. That's kind of optional these days.
Yeah.
But, that's the whole idea is if you don't do those first things, you do well in school and you go to college and then you get a good job, and that's how you live a good life.
Yes.
And we're, most of us are still totally sold on that illusion. As if that's the way to be happy. That's the way of life work. And, it was when my stepson was failing kindergarten, literally, he was getting report cards. He was failing everything.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it, but it was true. When my stepson was failing kindergarten, the conversations that teachers were having with us is, well, if he's behind now, we've got to get him caught up because, next year they're going to move on to this and he's going to be behind. And it was literally like they at 5 had pretty much predicted his future as a failure in life because he was never going to catch up and he was never going to do good and he was never going to get into college and he was never going to get that good job. And for us, we're looking at it and saying, well, A, we don't really care, and B, we know he'll be fine, and C, this isn't the direction of things that's important for us. But there's a lot of people vested in that system, in that educational system, and that paradigm being the way it is. And there's a lot of people vested in that curriculum is the right curriculum. And, I mean, if you can imagine, put yourself in the position of a third-grade teacher who's been doing it for 20 years, how hard would it be to turn around and go, oh, my gosh, look at all the damage I've done to children. I've got to stop doing that. And most people aren't willing to go there. I think
to say
more and
that
more
they've been
people
wrong.
are.
Yes.
What's that?
To say that they've been wrong for 20 years?
Exactly.
That's a hard thing to do. Yes.
It is a hard thing to do. And I think there's, more and more people are opening up to the possibility that they could be wrong. But, my educational model that I work inside of really triggers a lot of reaction from people who have been teaching for a long time, from people who are administrators. If the world turned over tomorrow and all the schools were little community schools like ours, those administrators would all be out of a job unless they actually wanted to work with children again.
Right.
And most of them don't. They like their little desk at the district office or, whatever that is. And it's not that that's wrong, that they shouldn't like their job or they shouldn't like the administration that they do, but is it really important? Is it really essential? And is it actually what has any child's life turn out for them to do that? Right. Probably not.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm sure there's some teachers listening to us and there's parents listening to us, and if they're sitting there thinking, okay, well, what can I do? Let's say the teacher's sitting there and saying, okay, what can I do as little old me as a teacher in PS whatever do to help my students and to change the paradigm within my classroom? What can I do?
Yes. That was a great New York paradigm you just threw in there, PS whatever.
Yeah.
I went to PS 15 and PS 321 myself, so I happen to know what that means. But,
cool. I went to PS 177 and PS 216, so.
There you go, right? So for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, that would be the New York public school system.
Yes.
As a teacher, it's a little hard because in some ways your hands are tied.
Yeah.
You have the job to deliver the curriculum and at the end of the year to give that test and have those children pass it. But I think as teachers, there's thousands and thousands of teachers across this country signed a petition to end the No Child Left Behind Act because teachers see the damage that testing requirements are doing to our schools and to our children. And I think we could, band together even further and say, even just forcing this curriculum on children that they don't care about, it's just not what they need.
Right.
In the short term, just create the most loving and nurturing environment you can in your classroom. Run your classroom as a democracy. Give your kids a vote in what's going on. And you might be limited in what you can actually give them a vote. It might be, okay, well, should we do math now or should we do reading now?
Right.
Versus what do you guys really want to do? But give them as much of a voice. What's that?
Or field trips. Would you like to go on this field trip or this field trip?
Absolutely. And
would you like
a lot of
tomorrow
times,
be dress-up day or the day after? Or, right?
Right. Just wherever you can find that room to ask them and include them in the process of decision-making. That's what empowers children, not a gold star. The gold star, that turns them into puppies who learn how to sit, stay, and roll over for another gold star. Really letting them make as many choices as you can that would be my biggest piece of advice for teachers. As far as parents, you really have to assess for yourself if the school and the community your child in is really working for them. if you're interested in something different, if you're interested in the kinds of schools we're talking about, there are many across the country. Unfortunately, there aren't nearly enough, but you may be fortunate enough to live somewhere that's close enough to one, and that could be an option for you as well.
How could they find out about these schools?
Well, a couple different places. So the Sudbury Valley School, which is the parent school, maintains the best list of other schools around the world, and their website is sudval.org, sudval.org, and they have a links to other schools page that's the most comprehensive, and they can
that's awesome.
click on there and do the quick list. Another great resource is the AERO website, which is just AERO. That's the Alternative Education Revolution Organization.
Cool.
And AERO has some great resources as well, not just for Sudbury schools, but there's other models of schools that run democratic schools or run self-directed learning communities. So even a bigger, more comprehensive list there.
Awesome.
And if you happen to be someone in Salt Lake City and you're interested in our school, we're segolilyschool.org. That's SEGOLILY school.org.
It's an amazing school, Jen. I have to tell you, and I'm not exaggerating here, you saved my child's life. He went from, I'm crying now. He went from a child that was just struggling, not just in school, but in life, and had no confidence and no friends and no social skills, and he couldn't even read. And, a year later, he can read, and he can read well. And by the way, there wasn't any teaching of reading in that year. It was allowing him to discover his reading abilities for himself through the things that he was most interested in. And by being interested in something, he figured out how to read rather than being forced to read something he didn't care about. And just having unconditional support. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You see that kind of thing over and over again. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first signed Clay up for the school, and how is he going to? So he couldn't read before that, and so the question arose, well, how is he going to learn how to read? And and I was told by you and Kyle and somebody else there, he just will. He just will learn how to read, and my mind couldn't even wrap around that. Well, he's gotten all this help for all these years, and it hasn't happened. How is it going to happen now? But I just trusted the process, and all of a sudden, within a really short period of time, he started reading. And then he started having more friends, and he started feeling better about himself. And there was a relationship that was damaged with his father because of the past, and that got healed. Everything got healed. And so today he's this amazing young man who's got friends and communication abilities and social abilities and, reading and all these other abilities that he didn't have a year ago. And he's a different child. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for honoring him and allowing him to be who he is, and enough space to heal. Because really, I hadn't thought about it like that before this conversation, but that's really what we're talking about. He healed.
It is. It's a big part of the process.
Yeah. And so parents that are, listening to this now and they're kind of confused, what's the right thing to do for my child? Is there any guidance out there? Is there any, organizations or communities or coaching or anything like that can help them?
I wish there was, that I just had someplace I could point and say, here's your answer. There's really not. I wish there was just a resource for that. But, if you do look on the AERO website, you can find schools near you that are doing things like what we're doing. And even if you don't end up sending your child to that school, even just going there and talking to the staff at those schools, and, and there may be parent groups there that you can become involved with. So, there probably are some resources anything that I can just say, you got a www.helpfixus.com. So,
Help Fix Us?
No, I was making that up. I'm saying there's not anything like that. I wish there was. But even just going to the Sudbury Valley website or going to our school's website, there's tons of articles there that talk about this from lots of different perspectives. There are a few really great writers. Daniel Greenberg, who's one of the founders of the the Sudbury Valley School, is a prolific writer, has written a lot of great books, some of which are more about parenting than they are about education. And, there are other writers out there doing great things as well, but he's the one coming to mind.
And one other question. Would you recommend that if somebody can't get themselves or their child out of a paradigm, or if a teacher is, kind of trapped in teaching within the paradigm, would it be a good idea to just talk with children and say, you know what, you're not your grades. You are so much more than your grades, and you are unconditionally worthy now and in life. And no one's really better than anyone else. We just have different gifts and different talents, and some things are easier and some things are more challenging. But you are unconditionally worthy right now, and your self-esteem is not dependent on the grade that you get on your report card, or how much you get right or how much you get wrong, or even if you fail or succeed. You are unconditionally worthy. Would that be?
Definitely having that conversation is better than not having it.
Yeah.
And then depending on the space that particular child is already in, you might have to have that conversation 100 times before they really understand it, or it might need to come from 10 different people. But certainly to begin to put that in with a child, it's certainly not going to harm them.
Right.
It definitely only do good and move in the right direction. And even if their first response is to roll their eyes and go, yeah, right, now what am I going to do? I'm failing biology. Mm-hmm. Even if that's the first response, I think over time, whether that's coming from a parent or a teacher, sometimes all a child really needs is someone to just embrace them and love them.
Yes.
And, you never know when that time is going to be. You never know when that moment is that you're going to reach out to a child and you're going to say that one thing that you don't even remember 10 years later. Mm-hmm. But for them, it was a life-altering moment.
Yes. Well said, absolutely.
And
Jen,
how can people... about being a teacher.
That is. And how can people get in touch with you?
Through our Sega Lily website is one way, or you can actually just email me directly. I'm just Jen, Jen, at segolilyschool.org.
Could you spell that, please, for everybody?
Yep. It's SEGOLILY school.org. And again, it's just Jen, Jen.
Okay. And the website is just segolilyschool.com.
.org.
.org. Sorry. Org. Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. And any last words for our listeners?
Just one thing to get out there. We have been so successful in our community that we're actually full at the moment, and we're in the process of designing and building a new facility. So we just launched a capital campaign, and of course we are looking for donations. Anything helps, and there is actually on our Sega Lily School website, there's a donate button. So anyone out there who's called to support us, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And because we're a nonprofit, your donations are tax deductible. So when you print out your website from going through PayPal and making that donation, print out your receipt, and that's a tax deduction for you too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate you being with me here today. I'm sure you helped a lot of people.
Thank you. It's been a joy to talk to you, Nanice. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye. So whether you're a parent of a student that's having some challenges, or you yourself was a student who had some challenges, it's important to remember that those challenges don't define you or anyone. Those challenges don't make you smart or stupid or a failure or a success. You are unconditionally worthy right now. You always have been, and you always will be. And so there might be a time in your life that you felt not worthy because you didn't make the right grade, or you didn't do the right thing, or you were judged in some way, either in school or somewhere else. And what I would suggest to you is that you go back to that time in your imagination, and you imagine being yourself then, and being yourself with a sense of worthiness. I am worthy. Imagine the words in your mind right now. I am worthy. And take those words and imagine them dropping down into your heart. And from your heart, speak those words. I am worthy. I am worthy. And let that saturate your heart, oversaturate your heart to every cell in your body. And every cell in your body now knows it is worthy. You are worthy. You are worthy. And let that expand outside of you, out into the world, so that your energy of worthiness touches everyone and everything in the past, the present, and the future. And so that they too can catch it and know that they are worthy. The way that we transform the world is by sharing love and the knowingness that we are each worthy. You are unconditionally worthy right now, as you have always been and you will always be. I know this to be true. And it's time that you absolutely know it to be true. Please come to my website. Join me on my website, nanice.com, Nanice.com. Please read all the articles. Click on articles, shows, and more. And there's a ton of articles there about everything under the sun, from love, faith, worthiness, you name it. There are wonderful articles. All my shows, Chai with Nanice, are archived right there on my website, as well as other shows that I'm interviewed on. There's a free book download also on my website. There's also 2 free song downloads, everything that you can imagine. And don't forget the pledge. Go check out the pledge and take the pledge. It truly is a path to transforming your life and helping to transform the world. Being the difference you want to see in the world. The difference that you want to see in someone else, experience it in yourself. You be the difference, and it changes everything. You have been listening to Chai with Nanice. I'm Nanice. Have a great week.
Thank you for having Chai with Nanice. Please go to www.nanice.com for great free stuff that will empower you to live your best possible life. Free books, articles, shows, meditation audios, and so much more at nanice.com. That's Nanice.com. Nanice's books are also available in all major bookstores and Amazon. Check out The Infinite Power of You, Even Gandhi Got Hungry and Buddha Got Mad, Zest Point, Lip Prints, and many others by Nanice Ellis. To find out about one-on-one coaching and how Nanice can personally coach you to experience your best life possible, please email mybestlife@nanice.com.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. That's Nanice.com. Thank you.